Welcome to another episode of Talking with WIT Kevin and Son, featuring the people you should know. Hi, I'm Kevin McLemore. I am your show host, four-time published author and award-winning author. Some people say wordsmith, other people call me a mindset messenger. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Our mission is to give power to your voice, inspire, share stories and experiences and perspectives using the framework of teaching, modeling, and learning. Our purpose is very simple, folks. We want to create hope, helping other people every single day. So let me ask you to buckle up, sit down, and just relax a little bit. And let me tell you a little bit. Whatever the objective is, my guests, like many other people, are very successful in their lives. They create a framework that not only applies to their day-to-day life, they also enhance other people's life. Today, our guest is a certified grief educator, international bestseller co-author, and an international speaker. Our guest has graced the stages of Harvard University, Oxford University, and sharing her firsthand experience about the passion of changing the narratives about grief and the experiences of losses. In 2018, our guest unexpectedly lost her husband and became an unanointed expert. Her experience with family and friends and loved ones gave her a master class instantly on what to say and what not to say during the time of a loss. Today, we will be talking about what we should learn about leaning into grief. So let me welcome to the show a true gift to this world, the light in a dark room, a mindset messenger on a whole other level. Let me welcome my good friend, Miss Heidi Dunstan. Welcome to Talking with Kevin and Son. How you doing, Heidi?
Thanks so much for having me, Kevin. I'm doing well. It's an honor to be here. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a bit.
You talk about honor. You're the star. All right. You're the person in real life that make other people's dreams come true. And I'm going to say thank you, Corey Portier, for making the introduction. I've been on many platforms with you and Corey, and you guys do amazing jobs for thousands of people, not just
Mm.
hundreds, thousands of people. You guys do a great job. To my listeners, um, we've all have been in this situation. Um, and if you haven't, we will all be in this situation. And if you're never going to be in that situation, you will be part of the conversation of life after you're gone. Um, you- I'm going to tell you, I don't know where to start. I don't know where to begin. I have more questions than answers because many of these things that we're going to talk about, I probably made these mistakes too. I've been on the giving end and I've been on the receiving end. And hopefully, when we walk away today, that we will have clarity on the conversations we need to have with people that are experiencing loss or your interpretation perspective or the conversations being had to you when you're experiencing a loss. But before we go on, I want to learn a little bit about my guest long before 2018. Heidi, if you don't mind, share a little bit of your life and what you've accomplished, where you grew up, and so forth.
Thanks so much, Kevin. And you're such a gift. I'm grateful to be here with you today. So yeah, I'm a Canadian. I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, everyday kind of life, a tough childhood. I had a rough upbringing. And in 2014, life kind of came to a halt for me. I had to do some of the work from my trauma childhood, and I ended up at a personal development seminar. And I'll be honest with you, I was hanging on to life at that time in my life by my fingernails. I was not sure I was going to stay on this planet by my own choice. And I did this personal development seminar. I literally waited in the parking lot for a spot and got in, and I knew I had to do some work. And lo and behold, in that room was one of the volunteers. There was 30 volunteers in that room for the 4.5 day seminar. One of them was Mike Wilson. And little did I know that down the road, he would become my common law husband. So I did a lot of work over that time. Him and I became great friends. We navigated some really tough times in his life and ended up starting to date and became common law. And then a short while later, he had a massive heart attack and passed unexpectedly 2 days after Christmas and the day before my 40th birthday.
Um, That is a lot to carry with you to find love and then to lose love around one of the most celebrated holidays on this planet, on the Christmas holidays. Um, I always say that there are no original stories that any of us have, no matter who we are, where we come from. The only difference is the cast of players and the events and how we react to them many times. And I want to ask forgiveness before I even make any mistakes because I know this is a very sensitive subject, and I've been on the receiving end of this conversation when I wrote my book, The World's Not Ready for You. We have more questions than answers, and a lot of times we think that we're doing right, and sometimes we're doing more harm than good at those times. So we've all been at a funeral or memorial. We've all have traveled through that procession that we have either hugged or shook the hand of a child that's lost his parents, or a wife that's lost her husband, or a husband that's lost his wife, or a family that's lost another family member. We've all been there. Um, so, the only thing I can say is that, this is going to be wrong because this is on the list of the questions you should not say. So I have a couple of questions that when people are going through this, that they will say to you, thinking they're giving you comfort. I want you to tell me your interpretation, even though intentions are good, but how it's received from a grieving human being. Heidi, I know you're strong. You'll get through this. And I'm going to give you a hug. In the moment, how does that make you feel? Is that right or wrong?
So I took off the badge of strong a long time ago. And the hard part is from the outside looking in, I looked strong to the people around me. But when I was navigating the loss of my husband, I was broken. And I felt broken. My whole life was shattered. Every fiber of my being changed. And so I took it off because some people, I felt like they were kind of, she's strong. I don't need to be there for her. And so I comment on people's courage. I see how courageous you are right now. I comment on the action that it takes for them to get strong. I'm back to myself again, Kevin. But in those early days, weeks, I mean, I was a zombie for 18 months. I wasn't strong for 18 months. And I really needed people to acknowledge how hard it was for me to get out of bed some days, brush my teeth, have a shower, cook a meal. I lost 30 pounds in the first 3 months because I didn't have the mental capacity to put 2 pots on a stove and cook something. And so I needed the people to show up and acknowledge my courageousness and acknowledge, like, I had lots of people say, wow, you look amazing. I had one friend who said, have you lost all this weight because you're not eating? And so acknowledge the courage it takes, acknowledge when things look different, and maybe say, hey, is there something that I can support you with? I see that things have changed for you. And I mean, this one friend, she said, why don't you come over for dinner and a sleepover? We'll watch movies and eat popcorn and bring some Tupperware with you. I'll send you home with some food that you can just reheat. Because she knew that I wasn't eating. And so acknowledge the courage that it takes rather than saying, oh, you're so strong. I don't need to help you because they don't feel strong.
All right. And is that the same conversation you do have to a male um, losing a child or his spouse?
So whenever somebody loses a child, I always say it never makes sense when we lose a child. And it doesn't matter if they're an adult, it doesn't matter if they're a child, it doesn't matter if they've got their own kids. It never makes sense for a parent to have to bury a child, ever. And I don't have children of my own, but I've never seen a parent who it makes sense for. So that is one thing I acknowledge. And I often will say there are no words to take away that pain. And when I trained under David Kessler, he has lost a child, an adult child. And he said, when a child loses a parent, they're an orphan. when a spouse loses a their partner, they're a widow or widower. There is no word to describe a parent losing a child. There's no word to describe how much pain that has. And even without kids, I can't even imagine how painful that would be for parents.
I would say, um, I know from firsthand, I went through this with one of my close friends. She lost an 8-year-old child. And I couldn't say it, but I can feel it. And I know the way that, me being a father, I would be broken for life. Out of all the things that, I say I'm like a tree. I'm a strong oak. I will bend, but I'll never break. Losing one of my children, I would be broken.
It doesn't make sense to bury one of your own.
No. How does this translate when you're grieving? And I know I responded horrible in a church, and I think I was right. He or she is in a better place. She's with God now, or he's with God.
So even with my friends that I know have a very deep level of faith, when you lose somebody you love, your faith, some people question their faith. And so I never comment on their relationship with God or where their person is with God until they do. And I choose to do it that way because some people get really mad at God. And I want them to feel like they can be open with me, not me expect where their person is. And you have to remember that when they are with God, they're in a better place. As a griever, the best place is for them to be right beside you here on this plane. And they're not, and that isn't possible. And so the words can, not always, but they can cut deep for some people.
I am so glad you said that because I said in a church, in the congregation of my brother's church, today just happens to be the anniversary of his death. My oldest brother Dwight died of throat cancer, and I will tell everyone that's ever smoked and whatever, you don't want to be a witness to that transition between this life and that life. It's horrible. And I said in church, being very defiant, because I thought the best place for my brother to be is with us. Heaven is on earth in my heart. So I'm glad you confirmed that because I was angry. I have to tell you, I was angry. And I don't know if that's an emotion that people feel. If you can explain that, is why do we feel angry about that? Life itself, or even hear the comment, you know, um, I know if a person dies at 60, they say he lives a good life. Some people say he died too young. What's right? How do you address that conversation?
So I always just acknowledge, to begin with, anger. There's a couple things in there that we're going to unpack. So anger is a normal emotion in grief. And you have to understand and realize that what we can be angry at can look very different. Grief is, as individuals, our fingerprint. And so what I might feel angry at, you might not be, and vice versa. And so, yeah, you are angry at somebody saying, hey, he's in a better place because he endured a lot. I had a good friend of mine, her husband died of ALS. It wasn't until she said, I'm glad he's not suffering anymore, that we could talk about that. But as soon as, if I was to say, hey, at least he's not suffering anymore, it minimizes her suffering. It minimizes the fact that she's suffering right now, the grief and loss of him. And so it wasn't until, and she said it quite early. I mean, ALS is a brutal disease as well. And she's like, Heidi, I'm grateful he's not in pain anymore. And I was like, I understand that. But it is not for me to put that on her. And so I tend to allow people the safe place to go where they need to go rather than me tell them where they go. Right? So anger is normal. Now, there's a couple of prefaces that I always say to anger. Anger, one, is one letter short of danger. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Anger is one letter short of danger. So it's dangerous to stay there too long. Be careful with that. All right. And the other piece, do you know when you go to the gas station, you buy those scratch off tickets where you scratch the silver stuff? Anger's the silver stuff. right? And when you scratch it off, there's usually another emotion underneath it. And lots of times when we've lost somebody, it's because we're sad. And acknowledge that. Acknowledge the fact that it's almost safe surface to stay at the anger because we can exude anger at everybody else. But to move into that sadness, to say, I really miss my person. There's nobody to put it on. And so sometimes it's worth saying, hey, I got to scratch this off and I need to move through my sadness so that I don't stay in that dangerous place of anger. Because I'm sure that there's been people in your life that you've seen stay in anger and it doesn't serve them for long.
Yes.
And it can
Yeah.
really hurt their lives, right?
Yeah. And those are normally the people that struggle with resolving life issues itself. It's just one more issue in order to hold the flame closer to the gasoline until either they burn down the house or they explode in general. So I'm going through the list of things that I know that have been said to me during times of grief. And these are the things that I always think to myself, and you're the expert on here, what not to say. Now, the one thing that strikes me, and I remember someone saying to me is, I know exactly how you feel. And the only thing it responded to me is being polite in public, said, you have no fucking idea how I feel right now. But I never said it because I know they mean well, and I know people struggle with saying the right words, and there's no words. Can you explain to our listeners why is this not one of those things in the time of grief that you should say?
So every relationship that we have with the person. So, for example, when my husband passed, there were 600 people at his service. None of us felt the same. Our relationship with him was different. And it is wrong of me as the widow to say to somebody else that my pain was more significant than their pain. And so it never is, even when it's the same loss. I know exactly how you feel. They were so important to me. Yeah, your pain is your pain. My pain is my pain. And it is really hard to compare them and try to align with them. The person said it with good intent. But when you're raw because you miss your person, it doesn't land well. It misses the mark. And so turning around and saying, hey, losing a brother is a significant loss. And I understand the depths of that loss because I've lost my own. Owning your own process is way different. The hard part is we often in grief, because we're uncomfortable, we tend to compare. Great example. 3 days after Mike died, Heidi, I ran into a lady at the grocery store that knew us both. Heidi, I understand grief. I went through divorce. Right? These are the little things. I know what she said was meant with good intention. But when you feel like you got your skin off, right? Like you're hurting. You're not at your best. And I was mad. I was like, that is, I didn't choose to lose my husband. I didn't like sign a document. I'd take him back any day of the week. And so what we tend to do to try to build connection is compare. So I understand how you feel, right? You don't understand how I feel. So if you can acknowledge your emotions and you can recognize and see somebody else's to say, hey, losing your brother Bill was a significant loss in your life. I know how much he meant to you. That's a different statement. And it owns and allows you, Kevin, grieving to be seen rather than it being about me. Grief deserves to be witnessed. And the hard part is we have a hard time witnessing other people's grief.
What about acting out? Because I know I performed like I was the star of a three-ring circus after both my father and my brother died. I'm one of those people that if I'm standing in a line and you've got two or three items, that I'll let you go ahead of me. And I realized because both my father, both my brother, and I have a brother living with throat cancer, they all smoked. I don't smoke. And I used to train a guy that owned a tobacco company, one of the big tobacco companies. When I asked him if any of his relatives smoked, and he says, I won't allow it. And I said, what do you mean you won't allow it? He says, we put a disclaimer on the bottom of a cigarette package and says that this could cause damage to your lungs and your heart. It could cost you your life. And he says, people are stupid. He said they continue to smoke, even though we tell them that this could cure you. But everyone I know that smokes, it says I got to die one day. But I do know that every single time that I used to let someone go in front of me and I saw them reach for a pack of cigarettes, I would say, stop. I said, for the next 20 seconds, I'm going to save your life. I'm going to allow you to have that 20 seconds without a smoke. And normally I would let you go in front of me, but you're going to have to wait for me. I would rescind my kind gesture. So the one thing that I heard is everything happens for a reason. You'll be okay. What does that mean when you're going through that moment? You'll be okay.
I will never be the same. Am I okay now? Yes. But in the depths and throes of it, I'm not okay. And for you to think that you got a crystal ball to tell me I'm going to be okay, that tells me that you're not willing to sit with me right now. And so it doesn't serve that moment. And so be cognizant. Everything happens for a reason. There is no reason good enough for me to have to sleep by myself, eat by myself, have to endure the level of pain that I had to endure. Until I get a lesson from God when it's my time to go, I don't know what this lesson is, and I don't give a shit about it.
I'm glad you were very direct in that because I know this list of what not to say can go on for forever. And people that are going to be listening to this are probably some of the people who are going to be listening to this are 24 hours away from being put into this space with a close friend, a co-worker, someone they went to school with. Um, they're going to be put in a situation. What are some of the things that you should say when you're meeting and greeting someone that's experienced loss
Can
in
we
his?
add one more thing not to say?
Yes, please. We could add 10 of them if you have them.
We have a few, but let's backtrack. And one thing that we often say to somebody we don't know, how did they die?
I would
What was
never
the
ask.
cause of death?
I would never ask that.
Yeah,
People
it
ask,
gets asked. Oh, I have cab drivers. Are you in a relationship? No, I'm widowed. Oh, you're so young. How did he die? I'm in a taxi. It's 12 o'clock at night because you know me, I travel a lot, right? And I'm like, um, and I think part of it, Kevin, is that people we watch these CSI, Law and Order, all these shows, and even the news, where it's like, what was the cause of death? We think that we need to know that information. And unless you have the ability to bring somebody back from the dead, it's none of your business.
can
And
you
the
say that?
only Unless you have the ability to bring somebody back from the dead, it's none of your business.
I hope our listeners are listening to this. And Heidi, believe it or not, in the introduction, you heard me say in 2018 you lost your husband. Everyone that's listening to this is going, how did she lose her husband? I didn't never ask that. I grew up with a Southern upbringing. In my culture, we don't ask that. For the simple fact, it's none of our business. The only fact is that, we're in a moment and we're all grieving at some level.
Yeah. And so if I'll give you an example. 9 months after my husband passed, he was a retired fireman. And so I had to go to a fire service where they were honoring all the firemen that had passed that year. And so I ended up sitting at a table with another retired fireman who said, you're one of the widows that's attending the dinner. I said, yes, because I was with my girlfriend. So he kind of figured out that I wasn't a retired fireman. And I said, yes. And he said, may I ask who your spouse was? And so I told him it was Mike. And his head went down and he said, Heidi, I saw him a week before he died at this children's Christmas party, this for a community thing. And he goes, and he was happy and he was healthy. And he was telling me how much he loved you and how good his life was. And he goes, and then a week later, I got an email that he passed. And he said, may I ask what happened? Not what happened, how did he die, what was the cause of death. He asked permission if I was willing to go back to that day. And so if you know the person and you need to know, if it would help you, ask for permission first. But don't ask a stranger. It's not kind. Because I want people to think about 9/11. If you were alive during 9/11, you know where you were, what you did, and that whole day. You don't remember what you had for breakfast the day before or the day after, but you know 9/11.
Yes.
The day that somebody died that you cherish is going to be etched in your being, just like 9/11. And you will force somebody to relive that by asking them. And it's not a kind place to always put somebody. Somebody may tell you, and that's okay. If somebody's like, hey, so-and-so had a heart attack, hold space and listen. But it isn't your place to go in and ask them to go there.
I call those calendar dates. Is that there are dates that you don't remember anything else, but the day that you lose someone, it becomes permanently etched in your life. I won't say in your mind, in your life. I mean,
Yeah.
it just happened to be today was one of those calendar dates. I mean, my oldest brother was a hero to me, and I will tell you, he said something to me an hour before he died. That when someone says he's going to a better place, and he was suffering. He had been given drugs, and he said he was in massive pain, even though he was under the influence. And his last words to me is, Kevin, I don't want to die. I'm his baby brother. So, and that's when I learned going through a better place or seeing that light. I'm confirmed that the best day of your life is the day that you are here with those that you love. Those are the best days of your life. So, um, you're an expert. So, what are the right things to say? I can't imagine what you're going through. Is that right?
Um, I would prefer to hear, I have no words. I'm here for you rather than I can't imagine. Because nobody wants to, like, it's a nightmare, right? When we use the word imagine, it's usually around creativity. And so it can be miscommunicated. And somebody's like, why would you dream about this? Like, and you have to remember that when people are going through trauma, typically when we say it, it's early on. I can't imagine what you're going through. You're seeing somebody in those early days, weeks, and months when life is really complicated and hard. And so you have to remember that sometimes things get turned really literal. And we use really weird words around death. And so be cognizant of the fact that somebody, one, isn't at their best, and two, may not interpret things well. So I tend not to use things that could be used in a different way. And so, one, imagination is usually around creativity and dreaming. And this is not a dream, this is their nightmare. And so I don't typically will use that. I will not use that word. And so I typically will say, like, I have no words. Like, I see how much of a struggle this is for you. My heart goes out to you. I acknowledge what I see, not what I assume. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. I'm going to lead you in. I wish I had the right words to say that will comfort you.
There are no words, period. There are no words. I will tell you, I would much rather hear, I don't have the words, than to have the silence. And many of us are so afraid. Grief is a landmine because we all navigate it in a different way. And so it's a landmine. You never know. You never know what somebody's going to go through or how they're going to respond. And some people will avoid talking to somebody who's grieving or avoid the topic. And that silence is deafening. It is loud and clear. I remember it was before Mike's service, so it was probably 10 days after he passed, and my mom and I went to our neighborhood pub for lunch. And I mean, I'd lived there almost 20 years. And the waitress comes up, and she's never met my mom. I introduce her to her mom. I do not look like myself. Like I have been through a lot. And she's talking to me about NFL. And I kind of just stopped her. I said, I just got to stop you for a sec. Did somebody let you know that Mike died? Because I mean, we hung out there a lot. And she's like, yeah, I just never know what to say in those situations. So I just was making conversation. Okay, perfect. Can you go make conversation somewhere else? Because I do not want to talk about NFL right now. Like my world is shattered. Football doesn't matter. Right? Where she could have leaned in and said, hey, I'm really glad you're with your daughter right now during this time. Just to acknowledge, hey, like life is hard right now. Life's changed. But silence can be extremely deafening. So saying nothing at all can be really hurtful, especially to the people that you are close to. They're like, why didn't you show up for me? And so when you don't have words, say that. And when you say the wrong thing, own it and say, I'm really bad at this. I just totally stuck my foot in my mouth. I'm so sorry. You're important to me, and I don't know what to say. And I really want to be here with you, but I'm doing the best I can. Please tell me if there's something I can do to support you. And that is very different than saying, call me if you need me. Because I'm sure all of us, when we navigate loss, have had hundreds of people tell us, call me if you need me. And you don't know what you need because your life is shattered. Right. And so it's, how can I support you today? Or, hey, can I pick up some groceries? What if I drove your kids to school today? My neighbor was kind. He was like, we had a communal garbage can. And he's like, I know you've got lots of guests right now. He's like, leave the garbage on the doorstep and we'll take it. So you don't have to tell them where it is or the code or all that stuff. The little things, how you can show up makes such a big difference.
Speaking of showing up, let me ask you this. You have loved ones that when you lose someone close, they struggle with attending funerals, no matter how close they are. Um, to a widower, a widow, to a friend, um, girlfriend, husband, to be wife or husband or whatever, co-worker, when you are dealing with your own loss of losing that person and you don't show up for the event or the going away party. I know people that have gone through their life and held people hostage over not being there when I most needed them. And we talked about, needing someone or, during that moment or whatever. What's the right answer and how do we deal with that? Do we fault people for grieving in their own way because they're not there for us when we really don't know what we need at that moment?
So a couple of things. One, that could be circumnavigated beforehand, letting them know, hey, you know what? Like for me, if I had a good friend who lost a spouse, and I wasn't in a place to be able to attend that funeral or that service, I would go to them and say, you know what? I'm not sure that this is the best place for me right now, but I know that this is a long haul for you, and I will be there for you after, especially when it gets quiet, which is going to be in about 2 to 4 weeks.
Agree.
So, right? And so you can circumnavigate that so that it isn't a shock, right? And say, hey, how you're going to show up, because you still have to take care of you first, right? And I'm going to be honest with you, the world goes back to normal after about a couple of weeks. And some people, like the day after, that their world, nobody reaches out. And so, it's going to be, I'm going to be there 6 months later. I'm going to be there 8 months later. I'm going to be there 2 years later. I will be your friend that's going to be messaging you 5 years later to say, hey, I know today was the day that you lost your person. And I want you to know I'm sending you a hug today and thinking about you and them. And I've lit a candle in their honor. right? That's how you can show up for people, but you have to, the hard part was death. Like I said, it's a landmine. And so people feel like, oh, if I just avoid it, I won't step on the landmine. Well, turn around and tell them why. Tell them what your plan is so that it isn't a surprise. Because whether it was an unexpected loss or an expected loss, losing somebody brings a level of uncertainty to somebody's life. And when we deal with uncertainty, we're not a creature that does uncertainty very well. And so if you go to them and just say, I'm not going to the service because it's too hard for me, it creates more uncertainty. But if you go, hey, services are still really hard for me, but I do know that things are going to get quiet for you. And please know that I am going to be one of the people that is going to be there for you. You have now given them information and given them a solution. And it kind of helps with some of the uncertainty. You know what? I'm helpful to make egg salad sandwich. I can do this, but I can't do that. Right. And in the world of online, a lot of services now, because of COVID, are online. Mike passed before COVID. I run online events, so I live streamed his service. And some people were like, I'm not sure that I can be in the room with all these people who are going to miss him so much. And they were like, I have to choose to do the online version. And I was like, I'm glad you're able to do it that way. But do know that when people, like, I mean, we don't do services 6 months out. Typically, they're usually within a week or two, maybe a month. People are not at their best. So give them as much information as possible, take away the element of surprise and make it a little bit easier for them.
You brought up social media. I know a lot of people sensationalize the loss for likes and followers. And if I'm offending anyone, I'm going to say I would apologize, but if you're offended, you're probably guilty of the conversation I'm having. So I'm not going to take it back. But, and I'm guilty of it sometimes too, just for the simple fact, I don't know what the right thing to do. You know, I'll have someone that I'm close to that says they lost someone I never knew. And all right, you know, to you and your family and your loved ones, you're in my thoughts and my prayers. Is that okay?
That's okay. Yeah. I sometimes will add, I'm lighting a candle in prayer for your loved ones, for you and your loved ones. We tend to, I mean, I have a candle sitting right here. It's usually on. But it's an action we can take. If, you know, I had a colleague, her husband passed, and when we used to work together, we'd sit in kibitz at lunch or over coffee or whatever. And when she talked about her husband, she lit up. And so in my message, I said, you know, losing a spouse is a significant loss. And I know how much you loved, and I used his name because using their name is important if you know it. And I know that because when when you shared stories with him, about him with me, you lit up. I could see your love for him. Not how much you loved him, how I could see your love for him, present tense. And I would share a story about somebody if I knew the person. And one of the things that you can remember or keep in mind is that when you share stories, it helps to keep their legacy and the memory alive. And so even for you, we haven't been able to unpack there, but sometimes as simple as, may I ask your brother's name, Kevin? Allowing somebody to say their name if you don't know the person can open up and allow for connection. Because lots of times the way our norms are is like, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for your loss. Please don't let it get messy in my world. That's my interpretation of it. Okay. It's right up there. It's just a dutiful thing. And I just say thank you. And there's the connection stops. Right. But when you turn around and say, you know, losing a brother is a significant loss, may I ask your brother's name? It allows for connection. It allows you to say, hey, this is my brother. And I could then say, I'd love to hear a little bit more about him if you're open to sharing. And now we can actually have a dialogue.
Right.
Right? Because how many of us, when we lose somebody, it doesn't matter if you lost them yesterday or if you lost them 10 years ago, If we love and cherish that person, we want to talk about them.
And I was going to ask you about the timeline because of when you can have these conversations because I know now with my remaining siblings, we don't talk about losing Dwight. We don't talk about losing Brandy, which Brandy died way too young. She was 42 years of age. Um, we talked about the good times, some of the things that we have, the memories, and so forth. Um, is there a um, common thread between how long we should grieve? Because some people just say, "Hey, it's been 5 years, you get over it." I mean, it was 3 years after my father's death that unpreempted on the streets of New York at 42nd Street, 46th Street between First and Second. After a great workout on a sunshiny day, I broke down in tears because I remember my dad, and I'm crying openly. Is there a timeline when you get over it, or do you ever get over it? I lost audio for a second. What was that last remark?
Is that better?
That's better. All right. So what was
Um,
that?
I define grief as love. And so when we witness deep grief, we're witnessing deep love. It wouldn't hurt if we didn't love our person. I love Mike. I will love him to the last breath I take, which means I will grieve him. That grief will look different over time. It does change. People say, "Oh, does grief get easier?" I say, no, it gets different. Okay. When somebody first dies, it feels like it's this big, massive boulder. And as time passes and I move through some of the emotions, I believe that boulder breaks off. And eventually it's a piece that I can carry in my pocket, right? But there are some days that it can feel as big as a boulder, just like it did after your run, because grief is love. You love your father. You miss your father. And you can love him and cry just as deeply as you can love and laugh and remember him. And both are just as important. Neither one of them is wrong.
I'm glad you said that. Um, how are you today? And when you have your calendar day of Mike, um, how do you remember him, and how do you get through that day?
So for me, I prep for the worst, and I'm grateful that it is usually isn't the worst. I have all of my hard days in a 12-day span. So I have Christmas, the anniversary of his death, my birthday, New Year's, and January 6th is his birthday. So in a 12, like, I mean, I had my first 24 hours after he died, right? Um, and so that time of year can be really activating for me. I don't say trigger. I don't like the word trigger. It can be activating for me. And 6 years out, it's not as activating as it was year one. But I usually, I have a couple of plans, one where there's lots of people, and usually plans where they're a little bit more quiet or subdued that allow me the grace that I may need to move through the emotions. I always plan something in honor of Mike. So I always do something that we would have done together, something that I know he would have loved, a restaurant that he would have loved, or I would just go and do something that I could just see him enjoying, because a part of me believes that he is still watching over me. And so my hope is that he's still being able to enjoy it. And so when I'm honoring him, might be a couple of tears here and there, but it isn't the deep, dark sadness. It is just, I wish you were here, right? Um, or I miss you. But it isn't the, oh gosh, emotion. So that is what I tend to do. A lot of people find ritual, whether it be faith or that they go and do something in like a memory of, or that they spend time with other people that that knew him, like whether it be family or friends or colleagues, whatever, volunteer people, people of their church. Because mine comes at the holidays when everybody is busy. I choose not to be in the city where he passed and where we spent our time. I tend to be somewhere where there isn't memories of him. So I'm in Mexico, which is where I hang out in the wintertime now.
Mhm.
But I tend to find something to do that he would have loved and honor him.
Yeah, we all have our different coping skills on how we do it. I know my father passed away on Christmas Eve, and I know that every Christmas Eve, going through the wrapping process of the gifts, I always go someplace and just for 30 minutes just kind of sit, and I need to get it out. You know, my eyes sweat when I think about my father. My eyes sweat when I think about my little sister. My eyes sweat as we're talking and talking about my brother, and that goes on for my grandmother, my grandfather. There's many, but I also like my mother. My heart breaks for her because she has lived from losing a lot of her children, and I said I never want to have that experience. But I'm going to ask you this question. If you read any of my books, each of my siblings, my father, my grandfather, are in the people that are important in my life. They're all are named in the book. I do this for two reasons. One, because I love them and they're an important part of my life. They're part of my story. The other part, I truly believe that when you are in a book, you never die. Someone's going to read your story, and that gives you life. Is when people don't repeat life events and include you in those life events that you cease to exist. Um, can I ask you one of those stories about Mike that's worth repeating that brings a smile to your face?
Um, Mike was a big kid. He loved children. He was super playful. When he passed, there was 30 Super Soaker water guns in our garage. All right. So when I met him, one of the, I'd asked him, I said, why'd you become a fireman? And he goes, oh, I was going to be a cop. He goes, I was ready to go and apply for the police academy. And then I met a fire guy and he told me that they had water fights. And I figured that'd be more fun. And I'm so grateful that he did because I think a cop world can leave you a little jaded in life and he needed all the fun he could get. We used to have epic water fights where friends and family and their kids would come and we'd have buckets of water balloons everywhere. We'd have water guns everywhere. Like it was pandemonium. And yet, like, I could still run into those kids today, 6 years later, and they'd be like, I remember going to your house for the water fights. Like, it was massive chaos. It was so much fun. And he just like lit up. He was laughing so hard he'd have tears, and afterwards he would just cry because he was a very emotional, big teddy bear kind of guy. And he'd be so grateful, especially because some of those kids came from some pretty tough homes. And he was like, I'm so glad they got to cut loose and have fun. And I mean, I could look over at him. We'd be at a fine dining restaurant with friends with kids, and he'd be there with, I've got photos, 7-year-old on his lap with a napkin on his head. He always just showed up in a playful spirit. He was just a gem that way.
That's all right. Heidi, how do people get in touch with you if they need to talk, be coached, mentored, or just need someone to be there for them in that time of loss? How do they get in touch with you?
So I actually teach more of the people around you on what to say and not say to somebody who's grieving. So reach out if you want to learn more about how to support somebody who's grieving. That's what I love to do. I love educating people around that. I hold space for grievers as well, but reach out at heididunstan.ca or Heidi at heididunstan.ca, and I'd be honored to be able to support you and the people around you so that we can all grieve with grace together.
Right. I also think that this is just me talking right off the top and going away from my notes. Um, I don't know if you started a foundation, but I think it'd be way cool to start a foundation and have a massive, all invited donations get a water gun sponsor and just have one great big, like a pillow fight. Go to some
That'd be
place
so
where Mike
fun.
would have enjoyed it, invite the fire department to come there and just have a massive uh, water gun fight.
Epic. Yeah,
Epic.
it'd be so fun.
I would show up. I would
Yeah,
show up.
it'd be
I don't
fun.
care because Canada is sub-zero. I love Lake Placid. It gets cold. I'll come up. I'll come up and squirt a water gun.
Do you want to hear one more water gun story?
Yeah, one more.
All right. So him and I are at Costco, and it's February in Canada, so it's minus bajillion. And Costco sells summer stuff in the wintertime because that's just what they do. And they've got aqua bazookas, and they're big barreled, like big, thick. There's two of them, and they're about like this and about this long. And they're called the aqua bazooka. And I have to have it. In fact, I had to have two. So I bought them, and I'm thinking to myself as we're driving home, I'm like, and we're only dating at this point, so we're not living together. I'm like, I gotta test this thing out, and I can't wait till summer. So I bring one in with me when we go to unload the groceries, and because he's a kind gentleman and knows I don't do cold very well, he goes out to get the rest of the groceries, and I'm unpacking the groceries, but really I'm loading the bazooka. And he comes in and he takes off his coat, and I unleash this thing on him in the kitchen. And he's like, what about the hardwood floors? You gotta stop, you gotta stop. And it's like he's dripping, like there's water pouring off his nose. And we're both laughing, like tears down our face, laughing so hard. And he doesn't have a change of clothes, and it's a minus bajillion out there. So it was a great date tactic, Kevin. It was a lot of fun.
You know, I wrote a book called Dating with the Full Deck, and I'm thinking it's great date tactic. It is minus bazillion outside. He doesn't have a change of clothes. He has to have dry clothes. Oh, this is turning into a whole nother interview. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Okay. You are a winner. Like I said, you are a gift to life. I'm actually hoping that some water gun company gets a hold of you and says, let's hold one of these events and have some fun for just one day and bring people together instead of some of the stuff we experience here in the United States. Find a reason to laugh versus cry and
Mhm.
let the water cover up the tears. We have all lost someone, and it'll just be a day. I'm forecasting. I'm putting energy out into the world. It's a day to celebrate why we're here, to be a community, why we're here to share our love, why we're here to tell our stories, and why we're here and what is life if we're not having fun.
So true. Thank you, Kevin.
No, thank you. I have been one dying to interview you. Dying. It's been a long time. I have stalked you like you were a free Tootsie Roll popsicle. Okay. Listen to my analogies, a free Tootsie Roll popsicle. Yes, I have stalked you. I'll admit it. HR, come and get me. All right. I'm that guy. She is one of the most amazing people. You're talking about what she does in her real life, putting on events. Corey Portier is a good friend of both of ours. You're talking about putting on a show and keeping someone organized. I know people like myself and Corey were hard to wrangle in, and she is the reason why, at the end of the day, the star is still hanging in the sky and stay laying on the floor in pieces. She is the first, she is the question, she is the answer, and she's the final word in what we say before we say goodnight. She is the warm side of the cold pillow that used to be there. All right, that's Heidi Dunstan.
Thank you,
Um,
Kevin.
no problem. Thank you. Thank you. And I can't wait to have many more because I know I'm going to be pressing you to write your book. All right.
Gotta
Not to
get
go
done.
off anyone. Your story needs to be told. These steps of what not to say and what to say and why and so forth needs to be in an outline so someone can reference in the event that they get in that situation. Because we're either going to be close to someone we lose or we're going to be in the vicinity of someone we needed to be close to when we lose. That's just part of life. It's going to happen. And we're all going to go through these emotions that we get upset, we lash out, we blame other people, we start to question why we weren't there and what could we have done, and then we have to go on and living. All right. And the biggest thing is that when someone's going through these emotions, all right, we need to know what to say and what not to say. And sometimes our silence speaks more for us and tells us more about us. And the big thing, I think for me, I think hugs are important. Without words, hugs are important.
It
So
is.
I'm not an expert. You tell me if that works. And Heidi, is a big hug coming to you because we belong to a sorority or fraternity that we did not volunteer to pledge for. And but the nice thing about it is, when you're a gift to this world, you give to other people. Is there anything that we did not cover that you'd like to say or have a conversation about to our audience?
The last one that I'm going to say is instead of asking somebody, how are you? Ask how's today so they don't have to lie and say, I'm good, fine, or okay.
Right, Heidi, I'm going to give you one. My grandfather always says, always says it's me, and it took me a while to understand it. Heidi, how are you living?
Yeah. So true, right? I
Yeah,
love that. Thank you.
and you feel free to use it. Grandpa got it from someplace, and he passed it on to me. So,
Beautiful legacy to leave behind.
Heidi, I'm going to add you to a very unique list of people that I have in my life. People that are very successful in their own space, not only in their bank account, but also in their own space. And everyone has a secret that makes them get up, gets them through the day. They have secrets to their success. So my list of 100 people that have a secret to their success, I'm going to ask you because I'm adding Heidi Dunstan to that list of 100 people to share your secrets to your success.
I love people exactly where they're at without judgment.
Ladies and gentlemen, take notes, make notes. All right, because that was powerful. You talk about nuggets. All right, that was solid gold. All right. So, Heidi, we have covered a lot of information. We have shared, we have been emotional, we have laughed, we want to cry. And it's okay if you do on here, ruin your makeup and whatever, we'll find out. If you're a water gun manufacturer, whatever, you want to put on an event, how do we get in touch with you, Heidi?
Heidi at HeidiDunstan.ca.
All right, to my listeners, to grow, you must make some mistakes. To have confidence, you must address your anxieties. To forgive yourself, you must hold yourself accountable. To learn, you must unlearn some stuff. And to exist, you have to show up more and do more. Understand the power of your words. Know what to say and what not to say at any time of loss or even any time of bringing a life into this world. The one thing we share in common is that we both and we all love life, no matter what part of the world we're on. So, with that said, my grandfather always said, when you get to a place that you can help someone, he said, reach one, teach one. And if you like what you heard, go to YouTube and go to our YouTube page at RMK Productions and Network on a YouTube page. If you want to subscribe, I'm basically going to say you can if you want to. If you don't, my people that subscribe and follow are people that have a high call to action. If you're one of those first people that stops at a sign of an accident to help, then I ask you to subscribe and follow. If you're not, I appreciate your time and your support. I appreciate your comments on this subject that we've had. And if you're in a place, either with light or you standing in the shadows, call Heidi, right? Reach out to her. If you need counseling on what to say and what not to say, call Heidi, Heidi Dunstan. Heidi, my good friend, I hope this is not the last time you're on the show. I'm still going to bug you to do your book. All right. That's what friends do. We hold you accountable. I want you to enjoy your time in New Mexico. I want you to enjoy your time. And the next time you're on stage, think of me, just give me a little wink, a little tug on the ear to let me know that I'm there with you because you are my test person for the day that I get up there. And I hope that when I'm on stage at one of these very unique places or a Blue Talk, that you're there to hold my hand because you are that type of person. You are a rock.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I look forward to giving you a hug before you go on stage.
All right. I'm going to hold you to that hug. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. And like my grandfather said, when you get to a place you can help someone, it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one, and we'll fade to black. And we're out.